Hi, welcome to another episode of Cancer Tamer. I'm your host, Dr. Charlie Ferrer. And today we have an amazing program for you because we're going to be talking about some stuff here on Staten Island. And of course, with me is our co-host, Deborah Santulli-Barone, who's also going to have some information about what's going on. So what I'd like to talk about is the recent study that was done by, commissioned by Governor Cuomo to discover why Staten Island has such a high rate of cancer. And what I found amazing was that we were supposed to, the study, from my understanding, was supposed to be about why Staten Island has such a high rate of cancer compared to New York City, because we're all the five boroughs.
Part of it, right.
And what happened was that they actually, the commission study changed their parameters. And they changed it to do not Staten Island as compared to the other boroughs of New York City, but Staten Island as compared to all of New York State.
Really?
Which they said that is a more definitive demographic, because Staten Island is more demographically comparable to New York State as a whole, and it's like,
who came up with that?
Who came up with that? so we know that's not true.
Yeah, and where was this done? This was a presentation?
This was a presentation that was done here on Staten Island about 2 weeks ago in November.
Oh, okay.
And the health department, the New York State Health Department came in and discussed all their findings. You will be able to see their findings on our website at at cancertamer.org. And if you have any comments, we'd love to hear them.
How many pages was the findings?
The findings were actually about 20 pages.
Oh, okay.
And it talked a lot about what they were looking for, what they were finding, and so on. And here's where I got a little perturbed on the findings. Not so much the findings themselves, but how the study itself was changed.
Oh, okay.
They didn't keep it as what it was supposed to be, which was a study of Staten Island for in comparison to other boroughs in New York City.
It's supposed to be all five of the boroughs, right?
On the boroughs.
Oh, okay.
And they did it again. They switched it and changed the parameters to all of New York State, which actually, in my opinion, that just means that they lower the statistics by doing that, because instead of compared to the other boroughs, we're now compared to the entire state, and that makes the statistics a lot lower. So self-finding.
But a little play on the numbers.
Yeah, it's a big play on the numbers. Because according to the Cancer Research Institute, or the cancer data that they have that I found for Staten Island, and I'm looking at breast cancer in particular because that's what we specialize in, there's over 2,000, I think it's 2,146 women that are diagnosed each year with breast cancer.
Oh, each year.
Each year.
In Staten Island.
In Staten Island. And 1 in 49 die. Last year, as we did the Breast Cancer Diaries play recently in October. We showed that according to the American Cancer Society, 40,920 women had died, and 480 men had died last year alone of breast cancer. And so what I found fascinating was that the study then switched the focus from cancers with an S, cancers, plural, to having found thyroid cancer.
What made them, does anyone know why they just focused on that?
So my understanding from listening and asking questions was, that was one of my questions was, why did you change the focus from cancer in all its forms to thyroid cancer? And so the speaker stated that it was one of the non-evasive cancers.
Oh, so he's only looking at ones that don't kill you?
The ones that don't kill you.
Let's be honest.
And what I found fascinating was that they actually proved that 69% higher of thyroid cancer on Staten Island than all of New York State, and 67% higher than all of New York City. And their comment was that it's the Boro President Oddo's fault that we're higher percentage of thyroid cancer than all of New York State and New York City combined.
Now, we didn't say that, they did.
Fault. And the reason they said that it was Oddo's fault, or Boro President Oddo, was because he actually did a program that was a free evaluation for thyroid cancer, and they did an ultrasound, a free ultrasound.
And it was free, no less?
And it was free.
That's
here
fantastic.
on Staten Island. Exactly. It was amazing. You know,
I think it's beautiful that he did that.
I think you have a borough president that actually cares about his people,
Right.
and he's going to go. Just like free mammograms,
Right.
he's going to do a free thyroid cancer evaluation. And so they blame the thyroid cancer epidemic on Borough President Oddo by saying, well, if you didn't go looking for it, you wouldn't have found it.
Yeah, see no evil, hear no evil. I mean, come on. Get with the program at this day and age.
And so it was all his fault because he did that program. And they noted the fact, which I thought was hysterical, that they noted the fact that the only reason we knew was because he did that program, and no other state in the U.S.
Right.
is doing a program like that.
How about the boroughs? Do you know?
None of the boroughs had it.
So only our
Just
borough is
our
doing
borough.
that? I think that's pretty damn good.
That's pretty amazing. Again, here you have a borough president that actually reveres his people and is looking at what is affecting us. So when I asked, well, why did you focus on thyroid cancer instead of something like breast cancer, something that's actually killing Staten Islanders, or lung cancer, or you know, the big ones here on Staten Island are now thyroid, but the ones that are killing you are breast cancer, stomach cancer, and lung cancer, you know. And so what his comment was,
I want to hear this.
and I loved his comment, but he said, well, we don't want to scare people. So if we don't look for it, we won't find it. And thyroid cancer is considered one of those cancers that you're not going to die from.
So why talk about it?
So why talk about it? And that was actually his comment. Why should we upset the masses when there's nothing really that you can do other than get your thyroid taken out and then have to live on Synthroid or some kind of medication for the rest of your life? Because it's really not going to hurt you. And so if it's not asymptomatic, if it's not bothering you, then why look for it?
Right.
And it's, do you know the way to look for thyroid cancer? It's lethargic, depressed, you know, weight gain or weight loss, you know. So you, who's not tired and who's not gaining weight and who's not having fatigue? I mean, these are symptoms. So, you know, so his comment was, well, if you don't have a symptom, why go looking for it? And then the other comment was, well, typically you don't find thyroid cancer in most people until you do the autopsy. Got to be dead for the autopsy, okay?
Oh, boy.
But you typically don't find it until you do an autopsy, and then you see that the thyroid cancer was there. But all this time, it's affecting you in other ways.
Right. That's
you know?
true.
So I found that irreprehensible for them to say such a thing. And I thought that it was kind of comical when I said, oh, well, you mean this is like the military. Don't ask, don't tell. Don't look, don't find.
Right.
You know, and so, of course, they did the backpedaling immediately.
Was there someone to do that, specializing just in that, to backpedal? And
I think there was. There was an individual there, and I don't know if I should say his name, but he was there. He was one of the
like on the panel
the
there?
Speakers, or their, what I call the little shark. So he's supposed to make sure that if you have any objections, that he mitigates those objections and throws information elsewhere so that you'll stop talking about, hey, how stupid is it for you to blame the borough president about finding thyroid cancer? You know, and so one of the comments that he had made, and one woman spoke up, and she spoke about the fact that, you know, she had metastatic breast cancer, and she was worried about the fact that now they are planning to finish capping off the Great Kills landfill, and they haven't decided how they're going to do it, whether they're going to put it with a plastic cap and then put the soil on top, or they're going to cover it up and then put whatever on top.
And make believe it was never there.
And make believe it was never there. But the bad thing is that they're going to make it into a park.
That's scary.
And so, you know, so now we're supposed to be happy because we have a new park. But the whole premise behind that was when the woman objected, and here's where James jumped into her objections, and James is one of the health department's hound dog, I call him, and she said, well, how is that going to affect my children and my grandchildren? You know, because you're just capping it, but you're not doing anything to mitigate the toxicity of it. Right. And his comment, which I thought, well, you tell me what you think. His comment was, well, the only way your child would get sick is if he stood here for 10 hours a day for 24 days. And then he might get sick.
Really?
Then he'll get sick. But only if he stood here.
Right there.
Right here.
Right there.
You know, and he made a point of moving over and saying only here in the dump ground, and that's when you would get sick.
How can you even?
And so I thought it was really
an idea like that.
It was, I mean, what did you think of that comment? But what I found fascinating was that the woman responded, and I thought it was wonderful, because she said, well, my son may not be standing there for 10 hours a day for 24 days, but he sure as hell has been playing there for 15 years.
Wow, and I thought it was you that made that comment. I didn't realize it was someone else.
It was both of us that made the comment.
Yeah, I can picture you saying that, you know. But that makes a lot of sense, because when the dump was open years ago, they said, oh, there's no toxicity. And yet, when they closed it, certain sections, they closed it off, and they have these tanks that are sucking in the methane that has been emitted, and now they sell those methane tanks. So don't tell me the methane wasn't there before. You know, and that's the scary part, because they made it such hush-hush back then.
Right. Yeah. And so what gets me is the fact that you end up having this thing of, you have the little hound dog there, so it's like, woof, woof, let me throw you into this direction so that you don't look at these findings. Yeah. Or let me refocus you so that you don't realize that we've duped you. Or let me refocus you, or tell you how, you know, insane you are for thinking that you might get sick, but you didn't stand there for 10 hours.
Right, I
you know,
see.
But I've played there for 15, so what the hell?
Yeah.
You know, and the other piece too was the fact that a lot of our younger generation is leaving the island.
Right.
Because of the fact that they do realize that this is so toxic. One of the other pieces that I found that was fascinating to me, and you tell me what you think, was the fact that their whole treatment option, and they're actually going to, and I'm like, they're going to hire somebody to come and talk to you about how to treat your how to treat your cancer, how to be able to live with cancer better.
Really?
And this was their backbone. Well, if you eat better, exercise, and don't smoke, you will be much better, and your health will improve.
Wow, that's really scientific, isn't that? I mean, you know, they went to medical school for that.
Yes, and they're going to pay billions of dollars for somebody to come in and teach you
We could do that for free.
We could do that. By all means, please hire Cancer Tamer,
That's right.
the foundation, and give us millions of dollars so that we can go all over Staten Island and say, hey, if you exercise
and you
eat better and you don't smoke, you'll be healthier. But don't play in that corner over there for more than, you know, an hour. You know,
and not for a prolonged time of years.
Exactly. You know, just play on the other corner.
That is crazy.
And that was what I found was, you know, I have to say, how stupid do you think Staten Islanders are?
Well, that's what it seems like, that they think we're a bunch of idiots, that we don't get this.
Maybe it's we've been inhaling the fumes
and it made us
from here, and so we don't have a brain to think about how stupid these findings are. And I know this is going to kick me in the butt. I know somebody.
Okay, she can handle it.
I know somebody's going to get upset, and and so on. And when we go to try our new funding, we won't get it because of these comments. But it really is, demoralizing and inappropriate for you to think that Staten Islanders are so foolish that they won't see beneath the stupidity or beneath the facade.
Right.
And how dare you blame a borough president for trying to look out for his constituents and blame him for finding the cancer and making an epidemic out of it, because it wasn't his fault. He's letting the people know.
Right.
And
which I think is good, because otherwise doctors are telling you, oh, you're tired, you're depressed. Oh, you don't feel good, you're depressed. It's always about that, instead of finding the real findings out on something like that.
Or, it's because you're overweight, and that's your problem. And it's like, let's look a little bit further.
Right.
Let's look at the toxicity of this island. And that's the piece
and how
that
it affects
I was surprised that they didn't even touch on.
They didn't even touch on
it? They didn't touch on it at all.
Oh.
Their whole thing was exercise, eat better, don't smoke. And that will cure you. And so, and yes, I did record the
Oh,
stuff.
you did?
I did record it, so we'll have it
nice.
available. But it was an open discussion for everyone on Staten Island. I was kind of sad that not many people were able to make it.
Well, I think that's another thing.
And so
how many people have known? Like, if you don't pick up a newspaper or you don't get that app on your app on the phone that says there's going to be a meeting, they didn't really promote it. Was it on
Not
New
at
York
all.
One? I don't think it was.
No.
Maybe afterwards, but not prior to it.
Right.
It should have been all over.
And so it is that piece of they do their due diligence by saying, hey, we're going to have this meeting. But if only 5 people show up, then only 5 people show up. Right. And they don't get the information, or it's not disseminated across the place, and they can say whatever they want.
Right. And there's no one to defend us.
And there's nobody there to talk. What I found interesting was also, and this is one comment that I always hate when they come up with it, it's their little bulldog, James, turned around and when I first walked in, I said, oh, I have questions. You're not going to like my questions. And he's like, oh, well, just tell me now.
Ooh,
tell
really?
me now, and we can discuss them. And I said, well, I'll tell you one of them, and one of them was the fact that, this island is very toxic. We have 14 refineries around us. We have a dump that's been toxic forever. We have had uranium on this island.
Yeah, which I never
individuals don't even know about it.
Tell them about that. I want to know.
And there are the uranium on this island was here World War II.
1940s.
During the Manhattan Project. And so they had it here for a while. The developer brought it in and was hiding it here on Staten Island, and then he moved it off island. But there are still places on this island that are radioactive, or they have a lot of toxicity. But the way that they've worked at cleaning that up is to put a fence. So we'll put a fence on it. We won't let anybody build on it. And the radiation and the toxicity knows to stay on their side of the fence. It's kind of like Donald Trump. We build the wall, they know not to come over. It's like we put a fence and the bad toxins know not to jump over.
Do you know any of the locations?
Some of the locations are in Port Richmond, Richmond Terrace.
Okay.
Where they used to have the old not steamboats, but the boating places over there. And again, they're not being sold or used, but it's still there. The other piece too is the fact that we have all this toxicity on the island, and so what I would have wanted to have seen from the commissioned report was, how are we going to clean up the island?
Right.
How are we going to make it better?
Yeah, no one talks about that.
Nobody talks about that. The other piece too that people need to realize is, we did a show in October, September about the 9/11 survivors and the Survivor Fund, and how individuals in New York City, from Canal down to the Battery Park, and those affected by the debris,
right.
And how they were having funding for them and so on. And if anyone lived there or had symptoms or had cancer, they should apply for this fund. One of the things that I'm looking at is all the material that they were working in has been now by the EPA shown to be toxic.
Right.
And all of those individuals that were working or living in that area ended up getting hit from that toxicity and from the wind and the fumes and so on. Where did they bring all that toxic material?
That's right. The dumping ground.
The dumping ground on Staten Island.
Yep.
And so when you look at how toxic this island is, why aren't they also looking at that toxicity that was brought in, and why suddenly Staten Islanders are having such a jump in cancer?
Right, any cancer.
And getting affected, and why aren't Staten Islanders also included in that fund?
That's true. That's a great idea.
I know it hasn't been brought up before, or maybe it has, but I would say...
No, you heard it here first.
You heard it here. There are so many possibilities, so many issues that we have on this island about being toxic. We're pushing our children off the island and telling them to go and live elsewhere.
As much as I hate the thought, but I want them healthy at this point. I'm scared.
I remember when my niece said, "Oh, I want to go and move on Staten Island, and I'll live next to you." And I'm like, "No, you're not coming on this island. One with cancer is enough."
Yeah.
And that was one of the things where the bulldog, that I'm calling him, stated, well, the only reason that you have cancer and it runs in your family because your mom had it and your cousin had it or your sister had it or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? Here's the thing with running in the family and cancer running in the family that people kind of forget. So yeah, it runs in the family because I had it, my mother had it. But we all live in the same house,
right.
And we all eat the same things, and we all exposed to the same chemicals and the same toxins and the same. So in my opinion, if it runs in the family, then it would run in the family of my cousin in Connecticut, right. Or in Puerto Rico, or in Nebraska, got it as well. And they had breast cancer and they never lived here, then it runs in my family. But if it runs in the family because we're all living in the same place, then it's not so much it runs in the family, it runs in the environment. It's environmental. And that's the piece that they don't want to look at.
Of course not. It's too expensive.
Because it's too expensive to look at that, because then you have to start doing rumination, compensating, cleaning, cleaning the areas. And why aren't you talking about that?
Yeah, even if you didn't have this study that you went to, this presentation, just knowing what we know about the island, there is really nothing, no plans set to do any kind of a cleanup.
No, nothing. And that's what's shocking for me, because if you're saying, well, yeah, we know Staten Island is toxic, but we're just going to throw some sand over there in the corner, and we're going to cover up the dump, and we're going to make it a park so you could have fun running around in it.
Talk about putting your head in the sand.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to come out with superpowers or what?
Yeah, right.
And so I think, that we need to commend our borough president for looking for stuff. We need to commend the people here on Staten Island that are making waves, that are saying, please look at, please discover, please do something, instead of changing the parameters that you were given by the governor so that they are nicer, and so it doesn't show Staten Island as being so toxic, because who the hell would want to move to Staten Island realizing that we are toxic? And so you're losing revenue. And if you're going to do a program that's going to help Staten Islanders, let's do a real program, not just tell me to exercise, eat better, and not smoke. Let's do something about the dump. Let's do something about the water. Let's do something about the air. Let's do something that's not blaming or shaming, and it gets to the heart of taking care of the people on this island.
Right, and we can be a clean borough. We really could, with everybody working together.
We could.
You know?
And if you implement, I mean, there's something as simple as, sunflowers.
Right.
Sunflowers actually take in the toxins and clean the water.
Really?
Why aren't programs like that, natural programs, that's not going to cost you an arm and a leg, and it's not going to, it's not going to worsen the situation. It's something so simple as planting flowers that will take up the toxicity and the chemical compounds. And then what do you do with those flowers? You get rid of them.
Right. Okay. I see.
So simple measures like that, which would be so beneficial for individuals on this island. Talking to us as intelligent human beings, not telling us that only if your child stands in this corner here for 24 days for 10 hours. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
That's
and
crazy.
you're representing the health department with an idiocy like that.
Yeah, and how much money they paid just to have that comment.
Yeah, please pay me the money for comments like that.
We'll tell you a lot more.
I can make, foolish comments that way too, in my sleep. So I was, I really wanted to talk about that.
That's great.
I know that one of the senators was here on the island and doing her own little comment. I did not get a chance to see that one. I was sick. So let's talk. Invite me to your office.
Yes.
I promise I won't attack unless you say something stupid like that.
And we would like to work with the Borough President's office and try to help in some way, do some, some investigating.
Some education, which brings us to the fact that we are doing a new program for 2020 called Breast Cancer on Staten Island. We have applied for a couple of grants, so maybe this program will keep us from getting it. But we have applied for a couple of grants through Staten Island Arts and a few other places so that we can look at some of the toxicity on this island. But our focus is always on you, our viewers, and the individuals here on Staten Island that are living and breathing and working on Staten Island and raising your children. We want to hear from you what it's like living on the island, what it's like having breast cancer on the island or other kinds of cancers, and being able to talk to us and do a small interview with us. And we are going to be doing a documentary that comes out next October. So we're doing it now. So if you're interested in being on the documentary, please contact us. We're also looking for environmentalists, healthcare providers, anyone who would like to discuss living on this island and cancer. Email us at info@cancertamer.org, and of course go to the website to see our shows and to see the Messages of Hope, our first documentary that came out in October. Thank you so much for being with us and watching today. I'm Dr. Charlie Ferrer.
Thank you, Dr. Charlie.
And Deborah.